Welcome to CT Expert Insights. When your business needs people it can trust, you can count on us. We dedicate ourselves to getting to know your needs and finding solutions to meet them. You'll have a team of experts backing you up.
Hi, I'm Greg Corombos. Our guest this week on Expert Insights is Rick Terrien. Rick is a serial entrepreneur who has started several businesses. He's currently the CEO of Innovation Kitchens and the Artisan Food Networks, and he's also the author of Ageless Startup, Start a Business at Any Age. And it's the last trend we'll be talking about today, and the growth of people 45 years old and older starting their own business. So why is this happening more and more? And what do you need to know before deciding whether it's the right path for you? We'll discuss all of that and much more. Rick, thank you for being with us.
Hi, Greg. Thank you for the invitation.
Well, we'll get to the larger trend in a moment, but let's start briefly with your own story, because you've created multiple businesses since your mid-40s. And I think that you've even received 9 patents since turning 45. So you've been extremely busy. Why did you decide to take the plunge and start your own business, what's considered later on in life or later on in the career?
It was an extension of what I'd started with. I started our first business when I was still in college with a bowl of loose change on the dresser drawer. That business went 25 years, raised my kids. When I saw that the environment for that business was changing, it was about midlife for me, about 45. So I sold it. That business it was still going at 40 years. So I've got a 40, a 20, a 10, and I'm working on a 5 right now. It was a chance to just continue with what I'd learned. I really didn't give it another option unless I had to. So I took a little bit of a sabbatical and worked on what I thought could come next. And that blossomed into our second business, which I started at about 45.
What are you seeing right now in terms of how many people 45 and older are taking the leap to start their own business? Some say this is a very recent trend because of the uncertainty that's been created by the pandemic. Others say, no, this has been brewing for a very long time. People want to have a chance to run their own business before they hit retirement age. And so that's why we're seeing it. What are you seeing?
I'm in the latter camp here. In the statistics bear it out. Since 1996, over 20 years, the largest share of, in fact, the majority of startups have been launched by people 45 and older. And startlingly, within that, the fastest growing group is people that are 55 to 64. We're all drawn to the magazine covers of the 20-year-old billionaires. While that's a wonderful thing, there's nothing wrong with it, it doesn't come close to capturing the full range of entrepreneurship. And most of it is being driven by people 45 and up.
You say it's much better to do this midway through your working life, or even later, as you just mentioned, so many folks doing this mid-50s to mid-60s, than it is to try this in your 20s. You've done both. So why is it easier to do it later?
The flip answer there is you know a lot more about what doesn't work. That's a hard skill set to garner and build, and you really can only do it through experience. It's not that the 20 and 30-year-olds don't know wonderful things. They do. It's just the additive nature of working through a career, building a knowledge base, most importantly, building the networks that you want can grow new businesses around. I think that's the key to entrepreneurship in the 21st century, is to be as small as you can personally in your commercial life. Build yourself an LLC, get it hardwired, but then go out and network with other small entities and put them together on a project kind of basis. I think that's where entrepreneurship is going. And I think that that's where older folks in this position have a significant advantage.
Let's talk about what you call the 3 starts. Start small, start smart, and start now. Because when people think about starting businesses late in life, I can easily see people thinking, wait a minute, I'd love to do that. I'd love to be my own boss, but I finally just started earning some real money in the past few years. I've got college bills coming soon and retirement to think about not too far down the road. And going on my own carries a huge risk. And you talk about minimizing risk, but I think the 3 starts are key here as well for anyone who would seem to think that rolling the dice in a massive way has to be the only option here.
Right. Well, that's the last thing I want them to do, is roll the dice in a massive way. I do want them to start small, and I want them to start smart. And typically that means going slow. It's the opposite of what the mindset is blaring from the media about how entrepreneurs should behave, and everything is full tilt and rip off the mirrors and off you go. That's not the kind of entrepreneurship we're talking about here. We're talking about one-person businesses. Get them wired up carefully and accurately, put them in place, start to build networks around those things. Everything takes longer than you expect, and this is no different. You can certainly throw money at problems, but that doesn't solve much and really may not get you the right answers. So you do start small, you start smart, you want to plan this out, but most importantly, you want to start right now. It will take longer than you expect, but that's not a reason not to start. That's the reason to get going right now. There are 32 million total businesses in the United States right now, at least pre-pandemic. Of those 32 million, 25 million are one-person businesses. So there is no shame in this. It's the driving piece of the economy. And most of those folks in that 25 million one-person businesses do it part-time. So it's not throwing massive resources at anything to get it started. It's more to wire yourself up to start to make contributions to your community and to the industries you worked in and want to support.
So in a lot of cases, what you're saying is you can start this new business while still doing your old job, and maybe for quite a while.
I think that's an ideal way to do it. And there are multiple ways to describe it. The term of art we use here is phased retirements. And I think we're facing a wave of this kind of opportunity. And what's the Chinese word? Danger and opportunity is the word for crisis. Right now, there's a whole lot of businesses that are going to be reopening, and they're going to be under significant financial stress. A lot of people are going to be looking at their older workers. They're generally the higher salaries, may have additional health risks under this scenario. So the idea is to do a phased transition rather than just pull the rug out from people. You're going to lose a lot of talent doing it that way, and it doesn't really serve anybody involved. If you can let somebody transfer out of a full employment in a phased kind of a way into their own small scale LLC type business, a consulting business, they very well could continue to be an asset to that company for years to come, but it's just in a different format.
We're talking with Rick Terrien. The book is Ageless Startup. And Rick, you mentioned consulting just a moment ago, and you also mentioned that there's millions upon millions of one-person businesses out there. Is that one of the areas that's most common? What other types of businesses are you seeing one person create that they can start small, start smart, and start right away and kind of ramp up while they're still working with the job they had previously?
Right. Well, so certainly this consulting and being a subject matter expert is probably the lowest hanging fruit in that conversation. But it doesn't mean that you have to be a PhD neuroscience scientist to go out and do this kind of work. You can be an expert or someone with a deep knowledge of fire suppression systems or horticulture or landscaping. There are what is incumbent upon these new businesses to go out and aggregate a group of customers and perhaps a group of business partners to meet these problems. You can go up and down the food chain and find any kind of market that would benefit from the skill sets of an older person, someone with experience. It may not be your only customer. You may have to get 5 or 6 or 10 of those customers and spread them around. But this is 2020, and there is a lot of cheap tools for collaborating and working at distance, and it's almost a perfect setup for this kind of opportunity.
You also in your book talk about the bootstrap system. Tell us what you mean by that.
I want you to stay within your limits. At this age, there's no reason to bet the farm. You can bet a few $100s to start a business, to get your LLC up and running and get yourself a little bit of a web presence. That's the kind of bootstrapping. I want you to take this out of your wallet. I don't want to go out and bother your family and friends, or worse yet, go out and try to raise outside third-party money for enterprises of this kind. That doesn't mean you won't ever do that, but at the very earliest stages, you've got to prove this to yourself, and bringing in extra money can mask problems quickly. When you're spending your own money, you're really careful. And that's a good thing under these circumstances. As the business matures and gets a little bigger, there's other opportunities to fund it, all just 1,000 different ways of crowdfunding and all the rest of it. But in the beginning, it's best to go slow and pay for it yourself and get yourself up and running, stand yourself up, announce yourself to the world, and see what happens.
Rick, you mentioned getting one or preferably more very consistent clients as a good way to get rolling with this new business. One of the things I've seen that you highly encourage is business to business type businesses. Why do you believe that's a really smart way to go?
It's one, because it's what I know. So I'm certainly biased along those lines. When you sell things directly to consumers, you're competing with virtually every other business to consumer company in the world. And that starts with Amazon and Walmart and the nice people that run the bookstore in your own hometown. And there's just Etsy. There's just a million ways to get at those consumers. And even if you catch a break and find something that's hot, it's going to get knocked off immediately because of the size of that consumer market. Businesses, on the other hand, are not as fickle. They have agendas that they need to meet. They have goals they need to meet. If they have a very specific problem and you can offer solutions to that problem and move it past it, money is not really the issue. There's margin in these kind of solutions that you can build off of these things. But more importantly, it's the sales calls themselves. You're not 1 in a trillion hammering at some poor consumer through their computer or all the other ways you can get at them. You can go right to a business, and you can generally pretty quickly find the person who is in charge of mitigating the problem that business has, and get yourself a hearing, make a proposal, and next thing you know, you may have a customer, or you may have a customer down the road who remembers you in a month from now.
And what are the biggest mistakes you've seen? Perhaps at one point you made 1 or 2 of these. I'm guessing the biggest mistakes you would say is to not start small, not start smart, and not start now. But as you go through this yourself and as you've counseled others doing it, what have you seen where you would say, please don't go down that road?
It sounds like a softball answer that I'm going to give you back, Greg. But what I've seen over the years is, especially with older workers, they don't give themselves permission to explore entrepreneurship. It sounds like, well, of course, you can just go get a book out of the library or whatever. But they don't do that. Older folks generally treat entrepreneurship as something a little more sacred, and the decisions and the information comes down from on high, carved in a tablet. It's not like that. The biggest detriment to entrepreneurship, among the biggest detriments, is not knowing any entrepreneurs. And the older folks and our youngest folks are typically the ones with the highest numbers that don't know entrepreneurs. So it's to give yourself permission to explore it. It's nothing that you can't do. People do this all the time. We're putting together a Center for Ageless Entrepreneurs that will introduce people to one another. Sometimes it's just bumping into each other, but that's the way the world goes round, and it's random connections and learning from people who are doing simple, basic things that don't have halos over their head, but are really good at solving problems.
Well, we're certainly not going to end on the negative here. Let's talk about the positive, whether it's from your own experience or other folks who took the jump and started their own business, possibly while keeping their previous job. What have you seen in terms of what it means to them to see that they actually pursued this, the dream became a reality, and whether it's moderate success or great success, what it's felt like and meant to them to realize that success?
Right. I think it's the addition of additional resilience and independence in your life as you get older. We talked about it earlier. Starting a business, everybody says it's scary. Well, it's scarier not to. When you have one of these in place and you learn to take it out and wake it up and introduce it to the world, you don't have to make millions and millions of dollars. You can make tens of thousands of dollars and make a significant impact on your own life in terms of independence and resilience and just your own attitude. You're a problem solver. You get to go fix things in communities that you love or markets that you grew up in. that's a real gift. It's a profound gift, and it has an effect on your psyche, and it has an effect on your wallet.
Lastly, tell us a little bit about Innovation Kitchens.
So that was a startup a couple of startups ago. It is still going on. I wandered into the food discussion. I've been a manufacturer my whole life. And a few years ago, about 10 years ago, I wandered into a situation where I was doing some economic development and business development, and fell into the idea of food and food manufacturing and just what a broken system that is. And what's happened is that our food system has been industrialized and centralized, and it worked fine until it didn't. And we can see in this pandemic all the different iterations of problems that have arisen from food. And so the idea is around the Innovation Kitchens and its subsequent partner organizations and things that we've built. I'm in Pittsburgh now. I was recruited here to help launch something called Food 21, and it's based around the Innovation Kitchens model. And this is an opportunity to build regional food systems where the local infrastructure and the local distribution, the local manufacturing gets a lot stronger and cuts down on a lot of transportation risks that we didn't really know we had until the system broke a little bit here. So it's still a manufacturing issue, Greg, but this time it's in food.
Fascinating career and great advice for a lot of folks wondering if this is the right time to do it. Start small, start smart, start now. Advice that I think will encourage a lot of people. Rick, thanks very much for your time today. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Greg. I've enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you, sir. Likewise, Rick Terrien, entrepreneur who has started several businesses, many of them after the age of 45. As we mentioned, CEO of Innovation Kitchens and the Artisan Food Networks, and he's the author of Ageless Startup, Start a Business at Any Age. I'm Greg Corombos, and for more information on this topic, please call CT at 844-787-7782.
With 125 years of experience, CT is here to help you at every stage of the business life cycle.